So I find it quite amusing that I'm going to talk about alternative realities in the alternative reality that is Las Vegas. But my name is John O'Hare. I'm head of Pure Research at Nokia EDU. Now, Nokia EDU is the learning and development arm of the Nokia Corporation. So we're tasked with providing or designing and delivering training content and facilitating learning for all 100,000 Nokia staff. And also we sell that service to our customers, which traditionally are the tier 1 phone companies like Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, all around the world. I've got the most fantastic job title of Head of Pure Research, which obviously begs the question, what's the head of impure research doing in Las Vegas? I don't want to know. But my job is to second guess trends and technologies that will shape learning in 3 to 5 years' time, get experience of those technologies and trends, and then feed them back into the organisation so that we can hit the ground running and have a competitive edge. So that's my task inside Nokia. And I'm going to talk about virtual reality. So why am I here? Well, I started looking at virtual reality about 3 years ago. I do believe there is a lot of merit in virtual reality being useful for learning. But the problem is there's a lot of hype and misinformation about VR, what it's good for or what it's not good for. And a lot of that misinformation is based on inexperience. I'll give you a prime example. So this is a learning and development company survey. They've interviewed 200 companies of all different sizes and of all different levels of the organisation. And these were their results. The most important thing is that 29% of their respondents, almost a third, have never tried VR. 50% have seen VR on the web. Now, if you see VR on the web, you're basically looking at YouTube and seeing a guy with a mask going, ah! That gives people the insight to comment on the potential of learning, of VR for learning. It's ridiculous. So that's why I'm here, to actually kind of try and put the difference between the reality of virtual reality and the hype. Now, the golden rule of presenting is know your audience. And I'm guilty, I don't. I'm British, and I've never been to DevLearn before. Now, all the L&D conferences in Europe seem to be a different order of magnitude. So this is a bit intimidating. And I said, I apologise if I keep having to blow my nose, I've got this cold. So what I did was I created the slide deck that I would have liked to have heard 3 years ago when I started looking at VR. So there are basically 3 sections. First of all, I'd like to quickly talk about the VR landscape, what virtual reality is, what its uses are inside education. Then I want to move on to what we did inside Nokia, and what influenced our thoughts. Bear in mind, this was 3 years ago. And so to explain what we did. And then VR is all about experience. You can't understand VR, you can't think about how to use it unless you've experienced it. So the last section, I want to give you zero cost or minimal cost ways to get started in VR so that you can get that experience, get that understanding, that appreciation, so that you can design content, or if a vendor comes to you to talk about VR, you've got an understanding from a position of knowledge, so you're not going to get missold. So it's a good, cheap ways of actually getting your VR content, of which you can probably see this tripod that I've made from a soda bottle and a bit of drainage pipe. So a very cheap way of actually getting a tripod, which disappears. So the first thing I want to point out is that we talk about virtual reality. Nokia is very real reality. Most people associate Nokia with the handsets, and that division was sold off a couple of years ago. But Nokia has always been more than just that. It had its origins in Finland. In fact, last year was its 150th birthday. It started off in cables, paper, rubber. It moved on into telecoms in the 1960s. Nokia of today has 6 divisions. It's got the mobile networks division, which is the infrastructure that allows your cell phone to work. There's the fixed line networks division. That does the broadband and cable kind of business. There's IP and optics that does massive scalable bandwidth for data centers, server farms, that powers kind of the cloud computer. Then there's analytics, and applications. So that's looking at automation and optimizing and insight into data. Then there's Nokia Technology that has a licensing division, so it licenses the Nokia name, also licenses all the Nokia patents. It has a digital media section, and a digital healthcare section. Now the digital media section produced the Nokia Ozo camera, the 360 camera, which is very high end. It costs about $45,000. That's a different division from me. I work in the central functions. I've been trying to get hold of an Ozo camera, but they won't talk to me because they're too busy talking to Hollywood. The last division of Nokia is Nokia Bell Labs. You've probably heard of Bell Labs. It's an industrial research laboratory. It's won 8 Nobel Prizes. So that's the Nokia of today. Our driving vision is expanding the human capabilities of technology. Now, I take that very seriously, and as a training department, we see more customers than anyone else in the organisation because we have students coming in, we're sending material out to students. So we have to be consistent with the corporate message. So if we're just stuck delivering instructor-led training, that's not consistent with our vision of the future and pushing technology. Likewise, if we're just doing web-based training, which is a little more than a glorified PowerPoint presentation for narration, that's not really cutting edge. So that's why I started investigating VR. So let's talk about what virtual reality is. These are the different kind of digital realities. Overlaying information onto the real world. Now, that could be on a screen in like a pair of glasses. So some smart glasses might be a screen, you can see information. So that would be very good for on-the-job training. So live training where you actually need to perform at the moment. Another way, you could use the live camera feed on a phone to actually have a vision of the real world, and then you have information overlaid on the screen. That's kind of like the Pokemon Go type information, where your digital information is that little Pokemon creature overlaid into the real world. So that's augmented reality. Virtual reality is very different. You're sealed off from the real world. You're wearing a mask and you're blanked out. You see the world that's created by pixels. Now those pixels could be generated from a digital photograph, or they could be generated from a computer-generated image, like a bit of a software environment. So it's fully immersive. You're hidden away from the real world. You escape by taking the mask off. Microsoft are promoting mixed reality, which is basically augmented reality. So it's a visor, you see the real world, but, and crucially, it has hand gestures, so it can sense your hands. It also has room context. So it will overlay information in the real world that you can interact with your hands. So you can scroll down a menu, you could select items by pointing. There are sensors on the visor that pick up your hands. It also has room context, so it can identify tables and walls. So it can overlay information onto those surfaces. And that's different to the augmented reality, which overlays the information like a pop-up. So you could have some, maybe some documents located on a table, something on the wall as a poster. So that's mixed reality. If anyone's got any questions, please just shout them out. Strengths of virtual reality. Now, we have to remember that virtual reality is a media. It's a way of delivering information. And it delivers it very well because it's immersive. You're hidden off from the real world, so there's no distraction. You've got total attention. Because you're transported to another world, it feels very real. So you've got that kind of engagement. And because it feels so real, you've got like an emotional attachment, you feel a bit of empathy. So you've got a better connection to the content. So it's very, very good for simulations. But it's not this magic bullet. It's not kind of be-all and end-all. Everyone's overhyping VR, saying it's the next biggest thing for training. It's only good for certain situations. You've got to remember it's not a gadget, it's not a box. It's a way of delivering information, like video, like print. So it's good for some things, it's not so good for others. And the other weaknesses are that it's not suitable for everybody. You know, some people with eye disorders, slightly different kind of variable focus, can't use virtual reality. A lot of people are prone to motion sickness using VR. And that's especially evident on the cheap kind of headsets like the Google Cardboard. The higher quality, the more money you pay into your VR experience, the better quality you get. But it's an emerging market.
Can I ask a question? Why is that?
Why is that? I come to that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, the next slide, actually. Quite expensive. There's no standards. It's an emerging market. And this is where we got tripped up, is that we thought it was more like a general kind of open standards, everyone was working together, It wasn't. You're basically forced into a walled garden at the moment. Google are trying to change that with their Daydream project, where they're creating standards for anybody to design a phone to work to those standards that will work with any Daydream certified headset. But at the moment, there are no standards. There's only one Google phone produced by Google that hits the Daydream standards. The other weakness is no hands. Because you're sealed off, you can't see hands. So we say it's very good for simulations, but it's not good for simulations where you need to use your hands to maybe type on a screen. So there are a couple of weaknesses. Coming to your question, basically your array of headsets fall into two categories. You have your tethered headsets and your untethered headsets. A tethered headset gives a higher quality experience because the screen is just designed for VR content. So it's still got the two lenses, but the screen is obviously a higher resolution than a mobile phone screen. You generally have a better field of view. But the most important thing is that the processing is done by a high-end computer. So you get better graphics rendering, and that kind of goes up a cable onto the headset. And the examples of kind of like Oculus Rift, PlayStation VR, HTC Vive. And they're not really portable. So if you want to start doing VR demos, you've got to carry all this equipment. The other option is a mobile phone-based system, where you're using a mobile phone to do the graphics rendering and also the display. Now that's why a lot of people get motion sickness, because if your phone can't process the images fast enough, or the gyroscopes or accelerometers in the phone aren't sensitive enough, there's going to be a lag between when you move your head or when the graphics update. And that confuses your brain, so you feel motion sickness. So the more expensive your phone, the better your VR content, or your VR experience. Examples of the phone-based system, you've got the Samsung Gear VR, Google Cardboard, which is the cheapest version. It uses pretty much most phones. We'll come on to that later on. Samsung Gear VR. I'll have these on at the end if you want to play with these. And there's Google Daydream, which is that kind of open standard idea from Google. Now this was I wrote this slide about 2 weeks ago. At the weekends, Oculus and Vive announced they're working on wireless, untethered headsets. Now, the reason they haven't got this working at the moment is that you have a huge amount of data to transmit from the computer to the headset wirelessly and instantly. So you're looking at about a gigabit per second of data in less than 4 milliseconds. The fastest reflex in the human body is the vestibular ocular reflex. So if you hold your finger out in front of you and you focus on it, and then you move your head left and right, your eyes are still focused on your finger. Now, for that system to kick in, it takes less than 4 milliseconds. So that's kind of the order of magnitude that you need the graphics to react and to have a good VR experience. And that's why the cheaper phones don't cut the mustard. So they've worked on a wireless standard that can do that. It's open at the moment about how good the battery life is, because then you're going to need a battery in your headset, which again will make it heavier and more clunky. So again, it might not be a great option. There's another company called Sulong Q, which again they announced they're working on an untethered headset against a high-end headset. It's using a Windows 10 Windows 10 computer to generate graphics, but that Windows 10 computer is embedded in the headset. So that's their approach. But that's basically the breakdown of their headsets. These ones are higher quality and a lot more expensive. The headsets are expensive, but you also need a high-end computer. And that influenced our decision about which option to go for, because the computers were more powerful than the standard Nokia laptop. So it wasn't suitable for everybody. Now, I'm going to get in trouble with this. This is basically how VR is used for learning at the moment. So I've taken a stab at this. It's not perfect. Not all these categories are mutually exclusive. Some of them kind of overlap. But we'll start off with immersive video for empathy and awareness. So you're transported to a different environment, and you experience that environment and feel attached to that environment because it feels so real. A lot of charities are using this to assist their fundraising. So they might use a 360 camera. They'll go to the aftermath of natural disaster, maybe a refugee camp, and film around. You then watch that experience, but you can look around. You're free to look anywhere in that set. You're not directed like you are on a TV screen to look what the cameraman wants you to do. You're free to look around in that environment. So that's one way, it kind of transport you to another world or another position to look around. Then there's simulation. Now I've split simulation into two different areas. And there's simulation for performance support and success. So visualizing for success. So this has been used like sportsmen or racing drivers to replay what they have to do. So a racing driver might kind of look at all the bends they have to drive around, and they hope to help memorize that, so they've got a reflex action, so that when they do it for real, it's almost second nature what's coming next. So visualization for success. The second type of simulation is that freedom to fail type simulation. You're simulating the real world where you want people to try things, fail, try again, fail, and repeat, and keep doing that until they get success. So learning by mistakes type simulations. Then there's VR is used for teaching. And again, that's split into two different types of sessions. You've got your micro content, which might be optimized for about 5 minutes, and it will focus on one subject or one concept. You've also got full lesson type VR, which might be 20 minutes long, and it will cover several concepts or several skills in that one session. That's used by a lot of VR creators who are working on high school projects, because you don't want high school kids having all the disruption, having to put phones into headsets, putting the headset on, taking it off, putting it back on. That disrupts the class. So they've grouped together a load of subjects, put into like a full lesson. And then the last use case is that kind of assessment quiz. So it could be like an immersive video where you have to spot the difference. It could be a simulation where you're being assessed or even timed to do that simulation. So it's used for assessment, but again, it could link to any of these others. So that's my quick stab at how VR is used in the industry at the moment.
Question. Are your slides available?
Yes, I'll stick them on a SlideShare and also put them on DevLearn. I put a Twitter handle at O'Hare-Waves, and I'll keep people informed on that. Any questions you have after this session, just drop them up there and I'll answer them. I'm very conscious I've got this cold, my nose is blocked, I can't hear, so I want to get you value for money. Any other questions? Yeah?
So it's a basic question that you commented on the rendering speed of the cell phones. What I've read is that your eyes try to focus here.
Yep.
But your device is right here, the screen is right here. So is that fixed by the rendering faster rendering speed, or it's going to be always?
That's fixed by the lenses at the moment, and then the software. So the screen is like about 2 inches away from your eyes.
Right.
But the actual fixed focus that you're looking at is 2 meters distance into that scene, and that's fixed at the moment. And I'll come on to a slide probably in about 20-30 minutes of the future predictions of the technology, how it's going to move on in the next 5 years, and that addresses that point with variable focus. But at the moment your focus is 2 meters into that environment, even though the screen was 2 inches before that. Now the way how people deliver VR content is it could be standalone content, so it's not connected to anything else. It could be part of a traditional blended approach, where you might have some web-based training, you might have some videos to watch, some documents to read, and as part of that learning path, there might be a VR component. So there might be a simulation or something attached to that. Another way is an embedded pop-out. So this could be some mobile learning, or it could be some web-based training. And during that session, it will ask you to put a phone or put your headset on to experience something in VR. You then do that for maybe 30 seconds, you take the headset off, and then you go back to the web-based training. So I've seen some use cases of that in onboarding training, where you might look at the company values, then you have a look around the office in 360.